Well, guys, welcome to the broadcast. We're going to jump right into it. Donald Trump says the UK should have acted a lot faster in letting US use military bases. So the ministers agreed on Friday afternoon that the UK bases could be used for US defensive operations against Iranian missile sites. Donald Trump has said the UK should have acted a lot faster in allowing America to use British bases to strike Iranian missile sites targeting the Strait of Hormuz. Ministers agreed on Friday afternoon that UK bases could be used for US defensive operations to degrade the missile sites and capabilities being used to attack ships. Up until this point, the government has allowed the US to use British bases, including the one on Diego Garcia, only to hit missile sites targeting British interests in the region. So they're saying, yeah, you can use these missile sites to defend us. So speaking to reporters outside the White House, U.S. President Donald Trump said it's been a very late response from the UK, and I would assume that that is the case because Keir Starmer is scared. He's a coward. Everybody knows this by now. Keir Starmer is an absolute cuck. You could ask Tony Robinson. You could ask the average British person, actually, the native British person. I'm not talking about these Islamic migrants or Islamic extremists, these imams who call for the Islamification of the UK. Not them, but the average British person who gets locked up for posting a tweet exposing such. They're the ones who are targets. They're the ones who will tell you that Keir Starmer is a coward. Donald Trump will say like, "Oh yeah, Keir, he's a nice guy," so on and so forth. Yeah, the guy's a nice guy. I get it, but the guy's just a coward. Usually, nice guys finish last. That's where the whole phrase comes from because they have all these rules they play by. They're, seen as like the goody two shoes, nice guy. That's what Keir Starmer tries to pan himself out to be. Meanwhile, cracking down on the average British person who speaks out against, the grooming gangs in the UK. So Keir Starmer is an absolute coward. We all know this. This just confirmed. Trump already probably knew this, but he just confirmed it to everyone. Probably reevaluated who the allies will be. And yeah, President Trump actually called the NATO's bluff on this. He showed who the true allies are and who the fake allies are. The fake friends. So you know, and then Donald Trump says, "I'm surprised because the relationship is so good, but this has never happened before. They were really pretty much our first ally all over the world." Referring to Diego Garcia, he said, "They didn't want us to use the island, the so-called island, which for some reason they gave up rights to it. I was a little surprised in the UK, to be honest. They should have acted a lot faster." Reacting to the government's move, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said it was putting British lives in danger. Of course, Iran would be saying that. Posting on X, he said, "Vast majority of the British people do not want any part in the Israel-U.S. war of choice on Iran. Ignoring his own people, Mr. Starmer is putting British lives in danger by allowing UK base to be used for aggression against Iran. Iran will exercise its right to self-defense." Mr. Trump has already piled pressure on NATO allies, calling them cowards for refusing to offer warships to reopen the strait. The president, who has repeatedly berated countries, including the UK, for failing to respond to his request for any support, claiming reopening the key oil and gas shipping route would be a simple military task with little risk. The ministers met to discuss the latest developments on Friday, where they reached the agreement. Downing Street, he said. The move will likely anger Tehran, which has already claimed the UK providing its military base to the US to use is participation in aggression. A Downing Street spokesperson said ministers condemned Iran's expansion of its targets to include international shipping. They agreed that Iran's reckless strikes, including the Red Ensign vessels and those of our close allies and Gulf partners, risked pushing the region further into crisis and worsening the economic impact being felt in the UK and around the world. They confirmed that the agreement for the US to use UK bases in the collective self-defense of the region includes US defensive operations to degrade the missile sites and capabilities being used to attack ships in the Strait of Hormuz. They reaffirmed that the principles behind the UK's approach to the conflict remains the same. The UK remains committed to defending our people, our interests, and our allies, acting in accordance with the international law and not getting drawn into wider conflict. Ministers underlined the need for urgent de-escalation and a swift resolution to the war. Defense forces have stressed the situation was so dangerous that not many nations would be willing to put warships in the middle of that threat right now. It is not clear why Mr. Trump believes such military action would involve little risk. Posting on his Truth Social platform on Friday evening, he said the Strait of Hormuz will have to be guarded and policed by other nations who use it. If asked, we will help these countries in their Hormuz efforts, but it shouldn't be necessarily once Iran's threat is eradicated, he said, adding, importantly, it will be an easy military operation for them. The Iranian foreign minister earlier spoke to Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper, who told him that UK operations in the region were in response to Iran's own strikes on Gulf countries. Pretty much what President Trump is saying, oh, you guys don't want to help out NATO? We were there for you. You know, the Ukraine war, we took care of this whole thing for you. You guys haven't been picking up the pieces. And so we're out. And then as soon as Trump said, okay, see you later, we're out, you guys handle it. You see all these European nations saying, oh, no, never mind. Zelensky was the first one to say, oh, you know what, we owe it to the United States. We have a bill to pay. So we're going to be sending our experts and drones and etc. so on and so forth. So Zelensky kind of set the path. Japan's going to be sending some stuff over too, and the UK is now finally offering. But it just goes to show, like, NATO, our NATO allies, so to say, wouldn't be anything if it wasn't for the United States of America, to be quite frank and quite honest, because they're dependent on Russia for oil. They're dependent on other foreign nations for oil. I think Germany, not too long ago, they had a snowstorm that caused a blackout, and they were dependent on Russian oil completely, 100%, because they don't have oil. These countries really, really, really need to understand their place in the world. It's really not what they think it is. They want to stand up to Trump, whatever. They don't like him. Like, bitch, please. Moving on, TSA officers are quitting as the funding standoff forces them to staff airports without pay. TSA officers are quitting. That's Transportation Security, what is it? Association or something. Administration. Yeah, Transportation Security Administration. So a lot of these guys are quitting. Eviction notices, vehicle repossessions, empty refrigerators, and overdrawn bank accounts. This is from the Associated Press. Union leaders and federal officials say these are just some of the financial pressures Transportation Security Administration agents are facing during an ongoing government funding lapse. The third shutdown in less than 6 months that has forced the officers who screen airport passengers and luggage to keep working without pay. The public is experiencing the consequences and long wait times at some airports as more TSA officers take time off to earn money on the side or cut back on expenses. At least 376 have quit their jobs altogether since the shutdown began on Valentine's Day, according to the Department of Homeland Security, exacerbating staff turnover at an agency that historically has had some of the U.S. government's highest attrition and lowest employee morale. It's just exhausting. Every day it just feels like this weight gets heavier and heavier on us. Cameron Couchins, a local TSA union leader in Boise, Idaho, told the Associated Press. Airport screeners have spent nearly half of the past 170 days with their paychecks held up by politics. 43 days last fall during the longest government shutdown in history, 4 days earlier this year during a brief funding lapse, and now 35 days and counting during the current shutdown, which affects only the Department of Homeland Security. They are considered essential, so have to keep showing up for work whether they get paid or not. That is crazy. Kachins, who has worked as a TSA agent for more than 4 years and is vice president of his regional American Federation of Government Employees chapter, said the number of resignations likely doesn't fully capture the extent of the agency's personnel challenges. He thinks many more officers would already have walked away in a stronger job market. I think more people are staying with the TSA that don't want to be here, Kachins said. The House Committee on Homeland Security has scheduled a hearing for Wednesday to review the partial shutdown's impact on the TSA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, the U.S. Coast Guard, and other agencies within DHS. A 2024 report by the U.S. Government Accountability Office found that TSA's workforce has long struggled with some of the lowest morale in federal government, driven in part by years of comparatively low pay and persistent workplace frustrations. While recent raises have helped, the report said dissatisfaction remained widespread, with officers citing inconsistent management, limited recognition, and poor work-life balance. The starting pay for TSA agents is about $34,500, and the average salary is $46,000 to $55,000, according to the agency's careers website. The GAO warned that unless those underlying issues were addressed, the risk of officers leaving the workforce was likely to persist. Precautions: the recent shutdowns have upended the sense of stability that drew him to federal service in the first place. He said he already works a seasonal side job screening college sports games at airports to supplement his income. Now, with this TSA paychecks halt, even that isn't enough to keep up with basic expenses. The financial pressure on his family intensified after his wife was unexpectedly laid off from a job 2 weeks ago. Every day I come to the airport and I look at the food drive, see what things I can get for my family, he said, referring to the donations that his airport, like many others, are soliciting to help TSA workers. It's unclear how long airport screeners will have to keep working unpaid. Both chambers of Congress are scheduled to be out of Washington the first 2 weeks of April, and Democrats have said the department won't get funded until new restrictions are placed on federal immigration operations following the fatal shootings of Alex Preddy and Renee Good in Minneapolis earlier this year. For travelers, the strain in TSA staffing has made airport conditions increasingly unpredictable. Wait times have stretched into multiple hours at some airports, with passengers in cities like Houston, Atlanta, and New Orleans reporting delays long enough to miss flights. That's absolutely crazy. TSA officers missed their first full paycheck last weekend, and absences are climbing nationwide, according to Homeland Security. More than half of scheduled staff were absent Sunday at an airport in Houston, Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. 38% of officers missed work on Wednesday and 30% on Thursday. I've heard from officers who cannot afford co-payments for cancer treatments or office visits for their sick children. Aaron Barker, a local TSA union leader in Atlanta, said at a news conference outside of the airport this week. Homeland Security has said roughly 50,000 TSA employees will work during the shutdown. Nationwide on Thursday, about 10% of TSA agents missed work, the department reported. The absentee rate was 2 or 3 times higher in some places: 33% at Houston's George Bush International Airport, 29% at John F. Kennedy International Airport in New York, 27% at Louis Armstrong New Orleans Airport, and 23% at Baltimore Washington International Airport. The staffing shortages have also forced some airports to close checkpoints, with wait times swinging dramatically throughout the day in some cases. Early Friday, Hartsfield-Jackson had 2 to 4 hour waits before easing to less than 5 minutes by early afternoon and then jumping back to 90 minutes. That's a crazy, crazy wait time. It's like you're waiting 4 hours to go from like Tijuana, and then it goes down to like 10 minutes, and then it jumps back to like 2 hours. That's crazy. This is crazy that this is happening, but this is what the Democrats want. They want to cause all this chaos, and they want the Department of Homeland Security to be funded, but they don't want ICE or Border Patrol or CBP to be funded. They want those guys to be defunded because they hate those guys. They hate that subsect of Americans. They hate that subsect of America. The ones who believe in closed borders, in secure borders, in deporting illegal migrant criminals. So I remember when Donald Trump gave his State of the Union, he said, stand up if you believe that Americans should come before illegal aliens. All the Republicans stood up, all the Democrats sat down. So it really shows who these people truly are. They truly are anti-American, these people, the Democrats. And I just hope that, CBP, Border Patrol, and these agencies know who's behind the government shutdown, who is behind them not wanting to get paid. It's the Democrats, the anti-America party. And it's really sad to say that, honestly. People like Chucky Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, all these guys, AOC, Jasmine Crockett. These people are just evil, evil people. Gavin Newsom, evil people. Honestly, and it's really something that this is happening in the United States of America in the year 2026. But the Democrats just need to be. They probably need to be just reset. They need just good audit and then just get everyone out and just start all over. That's what the Democrats need. So Trump calls NATO cowards over lack of support in Iran war. March 20th, that's today, President Trump assailed NATO allies on Friday over their lack of support for the U.S.-Israel war against Iran, calling the longtime U.S. allies cowards. Hold on. And it's kind of true. It's really true if you think about it. During the Russia-Ukraine war, where were they at? They were letting America foot the bill. The United States has sent more money to Ukraine than any NATO country combined, 100-fold. So Trump has been calling for major U.S. allies and others, none of which were consulted or advised on the war, to help secure the safety of shipping through the Iran-controlled Strait of Hormuz. The conflict has roiled and rattled global markets, killed thousands and displaced millions since U.S.-Israel strikes began on February 28th. The U.S. president complained that NATO countries did not want to join the fight against Iran, yet still complaining about high oil prices. So they're complaining about the oil prices. It's there, straight. I mean, they're the ones who depend on the Strait of Hormuz. The United States doesn't need the Strait of Hormuz. We don't need anything. Now that fight is military won, Trump says, with very little danger for them. They complain about the high oil prices they are forced to pay, but don't want to help open the Strait of Hormuz, a simple military maneuver that is the single reason for the high oil prices. So easy for them to do with so little risk, he wrote. Cowards, and we will remember, in all caps. Germany, Britain, France, Italy, the Netherlands, Japan, and Canada pledged in a joint statement on Thursday to join appropriate efforts to ensure safe passage through the strait, but German Chancellor Friedrich Merz made clear that this presupposed an end to combat. French President Emmanuel Macron said after a European Union summit in Brussels that defending international law and promoting de-escalation was the best we can do, adding, I have not heard anyone here express a willingness to enter this conflict. Quite the opposite. So he's a coward. He's totally scared. He gets a black eye from his dude wife. That's Macron, Bridget Macron. Who, man, everybody knows that by now. And for him to try to crack down and suppress people and sue people over the fact that Bridget Macron is a dude, it's like, come on now, give me a break. I hope Emmanuel Macron catches wind of my post somehow. People forward it to him. So if anybody can forward this video to this clip to Emmanuel Macron, French president, prime minister, whatever he is, Emmanuel Macron, that his wife, Bridget Macron, is a dude. It's a man. You could just tell. You could see. The eyes don't lie. We just look at him. Look at Bridget Macron. She is just totally skeletal and old and like broad shoulders. And the fact that he's not coming out and defending her publicly, he's not giving it. He's going and suing people. That's his way of doing things. He's suing people, or he's spying on them, or he's like silencing them, threatening them, all for calling his wife a dude, because she is a dude. And these are the type, just a bunch of weird. I'm not saying all the European leaders are weird, but a lot of them are fucking weird, spineless cowards. Look at Keir Starmer, you could just tell. And he appointed this guy, some dude, into his cabinet that was, like this with Jeffrey Epstein. They were like buddy buddy, and he said, "Oh yeah, buddy buddy," and he kept in contact with him afterwards. It's Keir Starmer right here, folks. Keir Starmer, the UK, France, Spain, all these places, Germany even, they have this weird history of pedophilia, and it's weird. It's fucking weird, and these guys are really sickos. So Trump, I mean, I feel like he should just kind of bail him out. But then again, he's going up against Iran, total bad guys. So they're not off the hook just because these guys are creeps. As the U.S. actually told Israel too to, hey, don't bomb this and don't bomb that, because if you do, we're out. And nobody wants the United States to go out because they need the United States. And all these guys rely on the United States, and they should fucking know better, dude. They should know their place in the fucking world. Anyways, guys, thank you for joining me on today's show, and have a great night.